welcome everybody in the room and for everybody joining from around the world on the live stream. My name is Sam Kass, and a partner at Acre Ventures, and super excited for this conversation on when food becomes security. Now, it's becoming more and more visible every day that food and our food systems are really the foundation of our security and really national security. We're starting to face unprecedented volatility around the world. We're seeing global trade being interrupted and disrupted, rising inflation, increasing input costs, and climate change is starting to wreak havoc on our food system. You used to think that these were, from the climate standpoint, far out issues, but they are starting to take hold right now. We know that our food systems is probably the leading cause of environmental degradation around the world, and yet holds probably most of the solutions to many of the environmental and climate change challenges that we have. But it is really on the front lines, and it's getting battered. Just last year, chocolate prices were up over 200%. Coffee prices also starting to rise. But when you start to model out what the future looks like in 2040, 2050, it starts to get pretty dire. Take rice, you could look at this for any of the major commodities, but take rice, for example. Estimates range, depending on where you are in the world, a 10 to 40% decline in yields. And you have over 3.5 billion people who depend on rice every day for their sustenance. When you start to think about not just the overall decline of those yields, but also the year-over-year regional collapses of crops that will become more and more normalized, the forced migration as a result, the increased food insecurity and political instability is something really actually hard to fathom in that future. So this conversation, I think, could not be more important in this moment as we try to figure out how to chart a path forward. And I can't think of four individuals who would be better suited to help us figure out what that future looks like. I could spend the whole 45 minutes going through all of their accomplishments, but I will keep it very brief. Your Excellency, Shettima, from Vice President of Nigeria, has made food security a top priority and food sovereignty a top priority, and has done some of the most impressive work that I've heard of, and so very eager to get your thoughts and your vision. Alvaro Lario, who's the president of IFAD, which is a really unique institution, kind of groundbreaking, providing credit to smallholder farmers around the world, and doing some of the most important work that I know of. Maybe the most important voice on the panel, Carolina Zimmermann, who is a farmer from Brazil. And I think so many of these conversations we miss the actual voices of the people who are actually producing our food. She'll tell you about her farm, but she farms both cattle and soy and corn as her main crops. But so important to center our producers in these conversations. And then Svein, who leads Yara, one of the most important agricultural companies in the world, has done some of the most impressive groundbreaking innovations in pushing this whole industry forward. And your voice for many years, sir, has been quite inspiring. So thank you for your leadership. So let's get into this. Your Excellency, please, you've really placed food sovereignty at the center of your agenda for Nigeria. Give us a sense of your vision for domestic food production, what it means both to Nigeria and to the continent, about how you have real food sovereignty in your country.
Thank you so much. In Nigeria, we don't look at food security purely as an agricultural issue. It is a macroeconomic, a security, and governance issue. And our major focus on food security is to use it as a pillar for national security, for regional cohesion, and anchor it on three principal pillars: improved food production, improved environmental production, and of course, regional integration within the West African sub-region. Because of the peculiarities of the global trend, we have no option than to really look inwards towards the position in our agricultural industry. And I will just dwell on 4 or 5 key areas. Resilient agricultural system in our different ecological zones. Nigeria is big. And there is an incestuous relationship between economy and ecology in the Sahelian zone. And in the north of Nigeria, we are facing problems of desertification, deforestation, and drought. In the riverine areas in the southern part of the country and in the north central, we have issues of flooding. So what are the solutions? We have to look for drought-resistant, drought-tolerant, and early maturing varieties of rice, sorghum, millet. And for the southern part of the country, the riverine communities, we have to look for food systems that are flood-resistant rice and cassava that can do well in that part of the world. And secondly, and most importantly, we have to do with security challenge areas. And these are largely the food basket of our nation. So the government is making efforts towards forming food security corridors and community-based security engagement to allow our people to go back and till the soil. And there is a new program being conceived and executed by the government. And that has to do with Back to the Farm initiative, so that our displaced people can be supplied with inputs, with insurance, with capital, to go back for food production purposes. The third challenge, which we have a specific solution, is the issue of our import dependence and forex volatility, which has a direct impact on inflationary trends in the country. We largely import wheat, sugar, we import dairy products, and I believe efforts are being made to accelerate the production of most of these crops. And we are also using local substitutes like sorghum, like millet, cassava to flour, all in an effort to address all those imbalances. Then the issue of input security. Inputs such as fertilizer, improved seeds, because the whole mantra is on increase in yield. As I've always said, entrepreneurial capitalism is embedded in the very psyche of the average Nigerian. But what our people are lacking is the wherewithal to place them on Jeffrey Sachs' first ladder of development. And the present administration is determined to change the narratives. And in the fullness of time, Nigerians will come to benefit tremendously from our initiatives. I don't want to dominate the discussion, but I have so much to say. But there are other members of the panelists whom I shall allow to make their contribution. Thank you.
Amazing. You can feel your passion for these issues and for the future of agriculture. So that's amazing. We have more. You'll get more time to get deeper into it. Alvaro, what is it going to take to get more equity and resilience through the system? How would you describe where we are? And from where we are, and what are we moving towards? What do you think that really needs to look like?
So I think, thank you for having us. What is clear is that we have more leaders as the Vice President of Nigeria, which every time I talk to him I learn a lot, and he's clearly very passionate, and I'll talk a little bit of some of the programs that actually we're investing and how this can also support the vision in Nigeria or in Brazil too. But I believe that we're seeing more and more leaders actually, especially in Africa, also in Southeast Asia, really putting food security as a primary driver of economic growth, also of job creation, of income in many of these rural areas, and really putting a lot of their policies behind. Because if you think about the current trade discussions, always the red line is on agriculture. Whether it's in the US, in the EU, Japan, China, other geopolitical areas. Now we're seeing also a lot of African leaders catching up, trying to determine in what crops they need to be food self-sufficient, in which ones food sovereign, and it goes beyond also production, like the Vice President was saying. It relates about distribution, transportation, infrastructure, access to credit, access to insurance, insurance, making sure that many of these small-scale farmers especially have access to markets, so producing is not enough. So I do believe that there's a more and more focus. However, we also need to see the investments behind. In the case of Nigeria, for example, we have been from IFAD working on special agro-processing zones, which have been quite successful, and now are trying to get more regions around it. Also with some social enterprises like Babangona Services, providing access to seeds, to fertilizers, to markets, to 650,000 farmers. Also in Brazil, we have been having investments related very much to what you were mentioning, some of the climate shocks and droughts in the northeast. What is important to understand is that agriculture food systems are also related to livelihoods, to income, and they need to become a business. So many times a lot of the shocks, a lot of the lack of access to certain inputs, technologies, knowledge is fundamental. And that's where I think there's more and more need to come to partnerships like here at WEF between private sector, where it's the global agro businesses, where it's the local financial institutions, where it's multilaterals like IFAD and governments. And I think that's where we will be able to really address a very, very complex challenges.
Yeah, and many of those shocks are hitting the most vulnerable producers around the world right now. So, Anna, I think it's important to ground us in the realities of farming. Like, it'd be great to, there's always a lot of people talking on agricultural panels that don't farm. So I'd love to just level set to begin with. What are the biggest challenges that you face? What are the risks and things that keep you up at night? And what do people don't really understand about what it means to make a livelihood as a producer?
Thank you, Sam. Thank you for having me. I'm very humbled for being a farmer here. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of context, especially about Brazil. So my dad comes from the south, which is a faraway region from where I'm from, which is the Cerrado region. And then he had not many opportunities. And then he came up, and there he met another two guys, and then they had a business about inputs. And later on, they started farming. And it's quite striking because today I'm only here because I'm a privileged person. I can speak English because somehow agriculture changed our families' lives. And agriculture changed everything that we've seen in that region and changed other people's lives as well. It changed the way we saw the jobs. But what strikes me the most is that changed that way, but also we do have problems still in infrastructure. We still have problems in internet, and we have other problems in which some other parts of the world, which they have smaller and medium farms, also do have. And also what keeps us at night is that we are risk takers, and we have all the burdens that's happening in the whole value chain. So whenever we're talking about credits, or when we need to cooperate with nature, right? So we are impacted by nature. We don't know how the weather is going to be every time it changes. We have lots of debts to deal with. We are price takers, so we don't control the price of the inputs. We also don't control the price of what we're going to sell. So pretty much we need to pray for everything to happen. We also do have lots of problems, and not listening that too much here because we're hearing lots about AI, but about labor. So still, it's something that strikes us. And especially in medium, smaller farms, you still need manual work. And some people still need some literacy in terms of digitalizing things. It's not that easy, even though you have ChatGPT nowadays. Some people don't know how to do some math. So there are some very, very basic stuff that we don't get yet in terms of how it is to be a farmer and how passionate people are about that, because that's your relationship with the land. I mean, how many of you would leave the cities to, have a garden or to do something abroad? And have you tried to have some plants? How hard it is to keep it up? So in a farm, it's even harder. And it's also hard to be a leader while you don't have that much infrastructure. Also, we do have a problem with the public image of being a farmer nowadays. And we also have this polarized world in which if you don't see that farming is a dignified thing to be doing, so why would people be attracted to? And most of all, if we think about the system, but we don't consider people's livelihoods, to get change, how my family did change because of farming, how are we supposed to do that? If we don't take care of farmers, how are we supposed to tackle food security? So taking care of farmers is taking care of food security. And we should put people's first and then think about how we can control things together.
That's amazing. You really we were talking earlier, and we were talking about all the data, new data, and precision agriculture and AI, and then you were like, yeah, there's no signal in any of my farms. Like, I don't have internet access. And there's some really basic fundamental infrastructure that's needed to even begin to bring a lot of the advancements to most growers around the world. So, like, how do you, when you step back, I mean, you're a global business, have operations around the world. From your vantage point, like, where do you see the biggest risks that the system is holding? And where do you see the private sector's role and responsibility to try to mitigate some of those risks and try to move the system into a better place in the future?
Well, thanks, Sam. And already very good framing of the state of the food system right now and what that means for food security. And with extreme weather, that's the reality now, and it's facing farmers across the world. So it's about building a more resilient food system. And for me, resilience starts in the field, the farmer. And then we need to focus on how do we grow food and how do we create crops. And when we grow a crop, we take the crop out of the field and we bring it to the market. But we're also taking nutrients out of the soil, and we need to replenish that in order to provide enough nutrients for the plants to grow. The approach to that is very much commoditized, and we need to ensure a healthy soil. And Sam, you used to work in the White House. You were a policy advisor on nutrition. And if I told you that you could only give 2 or maybe 3 nutrients to people, I mean, right, what would happen to their health? It would be devastating, right? Why do we think like that for plants? If we rather think about soil as a living organism, which it is, and then do precision farming, we bring the right nutrients back into the soil, we get healthy soil. And when you have healthy soil, you get so many other things for free. You get higher yields, better quality crops, and it's much more resistant to extreme weather as well. I've seen it myself several times in this last year, what happens in droughts or floods, the difference between healthy soil and not. But then, in order to do that, we need to have incentives for farmers. We need to enable farmers to do this as well. And no farmer can do it alone. No input company can do that alone. So that's about thinking the whole value chain. And this morning I started, you as well, at PepsiCo, and we see how they're now working throughout the whole value chain, engaging the farmers. And when you get that kind of interaction and incentives in place, there's a lot that can be done. And by the way, Anna, I can't think of any occupation more important than being a farmer, and we need to cherish that. And we need to help farmers to get incentives to help on the livelihoods and the everyday work that you do as farmers.
Definitely second that. I definitely second that opinion. All right, so let's move on to some more, get a little deeper into the pathways forward. It's obviously going to need a lot more innovation and diversification to create a more resilient system. We're going from the most stable 10,000 years on the historical record of on planet Earth. We just got really lucky, right? We've been living in a time of just really stable weather with plentiful resources of soil and water, cheap energy, and now we're moving into a highly volatile time of extreme weather, dwindling soil, we're running out of water, and so we have a lot of work to do. I do want to just put a little shout out to the WEF. Just put out a really important report on resiliency, and particularly as it pertains to our oceans. And as a land mammal, I'm biased to the land, but we forget that most of the planet is covered by oceans. And so investing in blue foods, innovation and partnerships for impact is part of, we're all sort of land focused, but fisheries are foundation to about 1 billion people's livelihoods and sustenance on planet Earth. And so this is a really important part of the dialogue. So what do you think is fundamental in Nigeria to improve the economic outcomes and the long-term resiliency for farmers and fisher?
Well, it's a very interesting issue because we have to move from, there has to be a paradigm shift in our attitudinal disposition as leaders when it comes to agriculture. Hitherto, we used to treat it as some sort of a welfareist model. There has to be a system-based approach anchored on science and technology and affordability. Some of the issues that are agitating the minds of our people has to do with that there has to be a shift from subsidies to increment in income and productivity. As I've always said, the whole mantra is on increase in yield. And this entails embracing improved seeds, fertilization, improved breeds of fish, good waterways, and most importantly, there has to be access to finance, insurance, and the small-scale fishermen and the small farmers are at the highest risk. But in Nigeria, for instance, the government, through the instruments of the Bank of Agriculture and NISAL, were able to come up with a blend of financial instruments with affordable insurance and so many beautiful financial products for the farmers to have access to credit, because without credit, without support, they cannot make much headway. Then the issue of access to land titles and waterways for the fishermen and the farmers. Through digitization and tokenization, our farmers can have access to land titles that will make them eligible to access support from financial institutions. And of course, producer organizations that will make them possible to form cooperatives for the purpose of aggregation, to lowering costs, and for them to serve as some sort of a family organization to pursue their interests across the board. And most importantly, for us in Africa, especially in the light of global trends, intra-African trade has almost become a necessity. There has to be some alignments. Now, within Africa, we are trading only 10.7%. Europe is 70%.
Wow.
Intra-Asian trade is going for 60%. So we have to make efforts under the canopy of the African free trade area to see that we really try to get our things in-house beyond the climate shocks. The global supply disruptions is there.
Yeah, big time.
So I don't want to dwell much on that, but honestly, we have to look inwards and see to it that as Africans, we find solutions to our problems. And honestly, we have no business being poor. Honestly, I'm speaking from the bottom of my heart. Because in certain parts of Nigeria, our land is so rich that if you can plant money, it can grow. So it's all about us embracing modernity.
You want to be a farmer there.
I'm moving to Nigeria. I'm coming.
So all we need is to embrace modernity, improved agricultural practices, fertilization. And before you know it, right now the yield on some of our crops, like rice, 2-3 tons per hectare. In some climes, they produce 10 tons per hectare. The same thing with potatoes. Most of our output is low compared to global standards. So be rest assured that the trajectory, as I've always said, of global growth is based in Africa. And Nigeria will certainly make or mar that destination. 1 out of every 4 Africans is a Nigerian. And by 2050, we'll be the 3rd most populous nation on earth. You walked in the White House. By 2050, we'll be more populous than the United States. Our population will hit 440 million people.
Well, I'll be living there long before then, so that's fine. Can I ask you one quick follow-up because of my background in politics? It sounds like that vision must really resonate. Like it sounds like really good politics too. Is this a platform that when you are out there messaging it, that you're getting really positive response, or do you feel like this is a vision that has a lot of work to do to get people to rally around?
Honestly, it's a positive response. It's good politics because ours is a very, very young nation.
Yeah.
The average age of the Nigerian nation is 16.9. We have to make agriculture enticing. Through agribusiness incubation, through mentoring. I'm a farmer. I'm a practicing farmer.
Right.
I have some young men under my tutelage whom I am grooming to embrace farming. Farming is not romantic, it's not attractive, but we are making it so. Look at this beautiful lady, she's a farmer. So I believe that I'm confident about tomorrow. I believe Africa has started getting its acts right. And in the fullness of time, I believe we'll stand on our feet.
Yeah. That's amazing. Can you tell us about some of the new models, like fundamentally, maybe one specific example to make it tangible, that you think are really is the model that actually unlocks a lot of this change, growth, stability, and actual economic value to the supply chain, but particularly for the growers who need it most? What are those things that we should really be focusing on and trying to lift up?
So I think one of the things that we have learned out of food systems, and I'll mention some models, that there's no silver bullet. So actually, it's important to understand, first of all, that it's not the same to operate as a small-scale farmer in Brazil, even in the south and in the northeast. It's not the same to be a small-scale farmer in Brazil than being a large-scale farmer in Nigeria. It's not the same as in Indonesia, in Zambia. I mean, that's a very clear, one of the things that I think, and I'll answer your question, but one of the things that really matters, I think, is to understand that the challenge when you are a small-scale farmer in certain low-income or fragile affected state is massive, and it's not the same even as a small-scale farmer, obviously, in a European state. And that sometimes there's the issue about, obviously, access to credit, to insurance, aggregation, scalability, all of that is always the same, but the type of responses are not the same. For us, what really matters is to make sure that the models are not focusing on subsistence farming, but actually in small-scale SMEs, in small-scale producers, coffee growers that actually can connect and can even get to the stage where they can export or trade. I mean, if we think, for example, about Africa, the reality is that they are currently importing, in terms of food imports, 70 to 100 billion every year. You can think about the effects, the consequences. You have 10 million young people coming to the job market every year in Africa. A lot of the population, at least half in many countries, is related to food systems, so agriculture. So there's a huge potential. And I think the issue many times is that it's very complex, and how you bring many of the partners together with the local institutions, the national agriculture banks, the local private sector, the global sector, the multilateral, the governments, how much the governments invest in infrastructure or actually in extension services. So it's very complex. That's the reality. For us, and I'll give you one model, for example, we're operating actually in East Africa, is bringing, trying to promote climate-smart agriculture practices for small-scale farmers by getting them access to 0% interest rate loans, which is one of the things that we know, that small-scale farmers, the 3-4 years, first years, they don't have the capital to actually turn into regenerative agriculture. They need some initial inputs. So that it's one way through local financial institutions, de-risking, and that's a 300 million model working with the local financial institutions and with the governments themselves. That's one way to addressing a lot of complex issues which relate to forced migration, to hunger, to poverty, to CO2 emissions. So it's not simple, but there's models that can work. But the reality is that we are all speaking different languages. That's why coming to WEF, being a financial institution, also a UN agency, I think for us we speak different languages, but brokering those relationships, it's not easy.
And in that model, just so we understand, you're providing the capital to the local financial institutions to do that lending at that rate.
Exactly.
Backing those loans. Got it. Okay, and
or climate-smart agriculture.
or the practices specifically.
Exactly, to try to support that transition for small-scale farmers in rural areas. Because local agribusinesses, even in Africa, they get lots of bids, they get bought up by a lot of sovereign wealth funds, land, all of that, you have the capital, you have the finance. The challenge is you go to rural areas, you go to a certain scale, that's where the real challenge lies, and where the livelihoods are transformed, where you can really create that increase of farmers' income. That's a different level of challenge.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, I think we've heard now kind of in a number of different perspectives around the challenges and perception of what it means to be a farmer, a producer. And in many parts of the world, getting the next generation to want to farm is a huge problem. Certainly in the United States, we're seeing, a massive turnover of land and nobody there to farm it, which has huge implications on the resiliency as consolidation just gets bigger and bigger. We have less diversity in the system. I know it's not this way in all parts of the world, but it's often an older man's world. And as a younger woman, I would love to your perspective on a couple of things. What has it been like for you to, and I've been down in Brazil, been experiencing how agriculture works down there. It'd be great to hear your experience a little bit as breaking into this industry and starting to take over a lot of the operations. And what do you think is going to be necessary for us to get young people to want to continue to farm? Because if we don't have people actually managing the land, there's a lot that's going to be lost. There's only so much a robot can do. So love to hear your perspective on that.
Okay. To be honest, I'm very right.
Be honest.
At first, I was not passionate about agriculture per se for the plant. What I'm passionate about is about people. And I'm passionate about what agriculture can help and what can it bring to people's lives. And if we don't think about how agriculture or farming means for better livelihoods, it's very hard to bring people at farming. Because if we don't have the proper, whenever you're little and you think what do you want to be whenever you grow up, if you don't see to have a place and being a farmer is not something that you want to be, why you want to do that? So we need to create enabling environment for farming being a viable business and a place where people want to live. And that means stability, that means not having food security problems, that means being accessible to have health. That's something it's very hard. In the middle of Brazil, we have to go for hours to get health, for example. Still the roads, also for creating this business environment. So we need to address those very basic issues so we can make things actually attractable for youth, so we can understand that can be a valuable life. And for me, what changed, it was in terms of purpose. I'm a millennial, so purpose is important to me. And even though I'm not Gen Z, just kidding. But really, it's really about people. And that comes to a second point, which is we keep talking about how farmers are important, but are we really bringing farmers to talk, So I'm really thankful for the WAF team for inviting me here, because if we're not at the tables, we're going to be on the menus, and we don't want to be on the menus being picked. We want to be at the tables talking, because we are part of the problems, but we are also part of the solutions, and we want to be. So whenever there's this polarization world in which environmentalists don't talk to farmers and people don't talk, what I urge you all, especially CEOs, leaders, policymakers, is invite farmers to co-design these different food systems in which we're willing to. So we need to cooperate and work together and have the difficult conversations together to find ways in which we can collaborate, not just put all the burden on the farmers. We cannot put all the risk on the farmer. We cannot put all the debts on the farmer. Otherwise, farming is not going to be viable, and we're going to put food security down. So we need to tackle that. The second point is also about science. So if you think about Brazil, 40 years ago, we were food importers, and now we're exporting food. And that's pretty much because of science. Whenever my dad came, we had less than 0.5% of organic matter on the soil, and nowadays we're up to 3%.
Wow.
And people are not really talking about that. We have so many practices that I'm not sure how familiar you are with, but for example, we have no tillage, which means we literally are planting things on top of the straw, and that keeps the soil moisturized, and it makes erosion. It doesn't make, we don't have erosion anymore, and then we can have the soil health. We have we have the crop rotation. We rotate also the crops. There are so many different other things. Bio inputs, for example. We need also to talk about climate adaptation, not only mitigation, because if we're considering this world, how we actually can survive this world. We're using a mandacaru, which is a cactus, bacteria of a mandacaru, to increase resilience to droughts. So that's technology, and we are also tackling environmental issues to reduce the risks. So there are many other things, and it's important for farmers to help to design, because if you design policies that are not good for farmers, they're not gonna work. And I can give you lots of examples which are happening right now. For example, whenever you talk about UDR, it's something that it really hurts our hearts in so many ways, but I can also give good examples of things that are happening. So whenever we talk about China has a program about cattle that they only they won for 24 months, so only we say 4-teeth cow. It means they're younger. It means they are, it's safe in a way that it's about sanitary reasons. And this has brought so much good for the whole industry. And also they're paying, and importantly, they're paying a premium because of it. So nowadays we have cattle earlier, which is going to reduce methane emissions. We have better herd management, and we also getting better also in science. So what are these incentives that actually are helping farmers to, whenever we hear farmers, to change a perspective and tackle this? And most of all, we need to dialogue. I mean, we're talking about in the spirit of dialogue. The word's not very dialoguing very much these years, but it's, I mean, my hope for the future as a young woman that we can keep having these conversations, hard conversations, so we can tackle those solutions.
I love it. I love it. Svein, so you're one of the largest, agricultural companies in the world. What do you think is going to be key to transition the system? And I would love to just, given you provide the majority of fertilizer around the globe, at least the biggest, what do you see? And a lot of pressure on fertilizer, a lot of sensitivity around it, tied to energy prices and climate. So, what do you see the key unlocks broadly, but also make sure with the focus on fertilizer, since it's basically the underpinning of how we're growing food?
Yeah, and I think we've heard it from many here already. We're framing this under food security, but we need to think about farming as a business because that's the only way we can scale, and we can, in order to make it profitable, to reinvest and grow the businesses. So let's treat the farmers as business people, because that's what they are. Then we also need to help to simplify and create incentives as well. And right now we're in the fourth agricultural revolution driven by technology. My frustration is that it's not happening fast enough. When we're walking in the streets here in Davos, there's AI everywhere, and AI, imagine what that could do for farming, and Anna described it really well on all the things that she has to master being a farmer, and on top of it, working in nature. The challenge we're up against is data, really, and the lack of standardization of data, so that we can really create the tools that would help farmers. We have models in place, and we have technology good enough to support the farmers. But when we see the models not working, it's because data isn't of the quality that it needs to be, and that's for us as an input provider. I'm not trying to maximize the amount of fertilizer. The opposite. I want precise fertilization, and that will help our business model. The more science and the more data-driven the solutions are, the better it is for Yara. So there's no. It's not a negative business case for us. It's the opposite, rather. But then we need to equip with the technology, and here's also where the young generation comes in, bringing new technologies in, and also demonstrating that the impression of what farming used to be is not the reality in the fields today. It's much more technologically advanced, but then we also need to drive that forward. So together with my dear friend Strive Masayiva, we launched an effort called the Go-Getters to celebrate young African agripreneurs. And when I see what they're able to do, the kind of innovation and what they're driving and how they're creating these businesses, it's extremely inspiring. And we need to get more of these stories out there to show that it's a tremendous business opportunity for young people. And you can bring in drone technology. You can go that for imagery of the fields. You can apply fertilizers with drones as well. But it's all these new tools now that we need the new generation to help us to speed up and to really accelerate the fourth agricultural revolution.
I love it. As an investor in food and agriculture around climate and health, I share your frustration about the slowness of adoption of these new technologies. We're making progress, but it's definitely not going at the pace that it needs.
Yeah, no, and also on the inputs side. So I was in early December. I was in Sevilla, and using biostimulants, and it's one of our biggest investments that are coming online this year in the UK, building on the portfolio we already have. When you get the right biostimulants into the field of the farmer to withstand heat stress, that farmer is able to grow pistachios in a part of the world where you're not able to do that from nature, but with using the right technology, using the right input, it's a more heat-resistant crop, and that's what it's all about, to help farmers to equip them with the products that they need to withstand extreme weather. And that's not a fiction 5, 10, or 50 years out in time. It's possible even today.
Amazing. That gives me a lot of hope right there. We're going a little short in time. I want to ask one quick question for each of you. Well, same question for everybody. One or two things that you need to help unlock the vision. Like, what is the partnership, or what could, there's a lot of people watching. What are the one or two things that you need, briefly, that would help dramatically accelerate your ability to see your vision through?
Well, for us to see our vision through, especially in Nigeria, Napoleon said, China is a sleeping giant. Let it sleep, for when she wakes up, she will disturb the world. So Nigeria is the African giant, and it has woken up from its slumber. And what I want to see in the next 12 months is to make it possible for smallholders and fishers to become investable at scale. Because farming is business, and farming requires modernization, as rightly said by the gentleman, and farming requires technology. Secondly, what I wish to happen in the next couple of months is to move climate adaptation from pilot to reality.
Totally.
This is what I wish we can accomplish in Africa. And of course, I want to start the regional markets. As I said earlier, as I lamented earlier, intra-African trade is only 10.7%. And in the light of global challenges, we hope that we'll start walking the talk and start trading within African nations.
Amazing. All right, what can we all do to, what's the one need that would unlock IFAD's impact that much more than you're already doing?
So to me, it's clearly government ownership, vision, and investments. I think that's the primary. Then obviously local financial institutions, the rest of the actors, the local private sector follows. But I think one of the challenges in many countries and in many governments is that actually we think about food and only agriculture, but it requires, as we have seen, a lot of investments in many other areas. So we're talking, and it has impact on health, it has impact on energy, but it's clearly infrastructure. It relates to many different investments within a country. And I think that approach of food systems that was mentioned, but especially on how all of this is linked together, can unlock the opportunities. We cannot expect neither the global private sector nor the local private sector to really invest in such a sector if we don't have that ecosystem. So that ownership and accountability, it's important, and that reflects also in how the investments are coming, from the government first.
Amazing. Yeah.
So 2 insights. Today I was hearing the CEO of NVIDIA saying how AI is part of a 5-layer scheme. So you need energy, you need cloud, you need chips, you need so many technologies so you can get actually AI. So this is also happening with farming. You need some levels of technology, infrastructure, so we can get to the level of, so we have the best of the best in the farming, but we also have the worst of the worst. To reduce this inequality, we need to build up infrastructure that's good enough so we can scale that. So we need first the right infrastructure with the layers so we can actually unlock that. And second, again, it's ask farmers to help to design things, especially to make their livelihoods better, to understand how they can be a viable business rather than having all the risks. And most of all, for farmers to help to feed the world as a business and to have better livelihoods.
Amazing.
I was going to say 2 things. Infrastructure was the first one, already done. Second one, standardization of data, so that we, and in the spirit of the World Economic Forum on dialogue and also creating across the whole value chain, if we create a data set, pre-competitive of course, where we can help farmers to simplify their lives and to utilize technology like we saw in AI, I think we could make great progress. And we're ready from Yara side. We have the VARDA foundation that we set up, because this cannot be controlled by a company. It has to be a foundation for as a global common good.
Amazing. We could keep talking for hours, but sadly we're out of time. Thank you all for your leadership, for your vision, for all the work ahead. I will just say that we're out of time, and the need to go from pilots, I agree with you, I hate pilots, to scale is absolutely critical. But I think with leadership on the stage and for people around the world who are watching, we have a chance to fundamentally ensure that our kids and our grandkids could enjoy the kind of lives that we've been so lucky to have, and to be able to feed themselves and build more prosperous families. So thank you all, thank you to the WEF, and look forward to working hard this year to bring some of this to life.